Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I just wanted to take a moment and, I'll try to give us a shout out every week. And today I got a special friend and a colleague. I invited him in to speak at the prayer conference this year. And I thought we'd do a little video. This is Travis Hovde, one of the leaders, statesmen for the Church of God in the North Central region, which is made up of North and South Dakota and Montana. And you've got one of the leading churches there, served on my council while I was there, and over ministerial development, just a great leader. And Pastor, welcome to Illinois. Glad you're here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about this in a little bit, but one of the things I appreciate about Pastor is that he has been on a growing track ever since I've known you. You've been improving yourself, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. And but anyway, when people hear that you live in North Dakota, I'll never forget. We were in Dallas. I went down to see my son. Mm-hmm. And we rented a car, and our car had a North Dakota tag on it. The odds of that in Dallas, Texas, because there's only about 750,000 people that live in North Dakota.
Right.
And so, but when people hear that, they say, it's like it's the moon or something.
Right.
And so, how is it living? You're a North Dakota boy from way back. Your great grandfather, is that right?
Yeah.
Came over from Norway, and so I mean, you are a Norwegian American, big time. And so how is it?
Yeah, North Dakota is a place where I grew up. So the cold temperatures, the climate, the prairie life up there is something that has always been a part of my life. But
just to interrupt, was it Monday? You went out walking your dog, and how cold was it?
It was. I have it on my phone. I screenshot it. It was negative 32. That's actual air temperature. Probably about 50 below zero wind chill at that point.
He's out walking the dog.
Yeah, and that's
and that's why I don't have a dog.
I think that's related to our population being below 1 million in the whole state, right there.
Yes.
Those days are population control in North Dakota, but it's brutal. Obviously, you know this. There's a lot of great things about North Dakota. The winters, especially the weather, is not one of them, but the people, the prairie, the country. It's a place where you can, drive out of town and drive into the prairie. It's a place where if you want to be alone and find solitude, you can find it. And it's a unique place. It's a wonderful place, though.
Yeah. Honestly, coming from South Carolina, I remember when South Carolina was geographically, you can put 2.5 South Carolinas in North Dakota.
Yeah.
And I remember when we had a little over 1 million people, and then 2 million. Now I think there's 6 or 7 million people. It's incredible. Sure. And so as the people moved in, like trash on the highway and stuff, it's really kind of sad. Mm-hmm. North Dakota is so clean.
Yeah.
It is pristine.
Yeah.
We lived there almost 5 years, and we kept up with it. There was one time we went in a bathroom that was dirty.
Yeah.
Anywhere you go, little mom and pop place, the bathrooms are like your mama kept them. I mean, it is incredible.
Yeah.
It just kind of came to me. We were chatting last night over dinner, and South Carolina. When I left South Carolina, I left the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
And when I went to North Dakota, it's different though. It was like I moved to European Christendom.
Yeah.
There's that Western civilization, Christian culture. Everybody is a Christian up there. Yeah. But you guys, you're trying to get those Christians saved.
Exactly.
And it's hard when you don't even know your sinner.
It is.
So describe to me, because I got a feeling that more and more most of us aren't in a Bible Belt.
Yeah.
So talk to me about ministries, because God's given you a lot of fruit there, and how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, and we were called to plant a church in our own really hometown. We grew up, in a smaller town outside of there. That's where I went to high school. But we live in a town about 50,000 people in Minot, and the climate there is people are religious. Strong Lutheran, Even in my heritage of the Scandinavian heritage, it's very common to associate being Scandinavian with being Lutheran, with having a Christian religious background. And then you have a strong Catholic and a German Catholic kind of background there. But what you have is a lot of people who, for the most part, and you alluded to this, live a moral life.
Yeah.
It's not a high crime place. It's not a. It's a very peaceful, very pleasant, enjoyable place to live. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people that have religion, but they don't have a real relationship with Jesus Christ. And it's trying to introduce them to a real relationship with Jesus Christ when some think they might already have that, or that it's unnecessary. And so you know the gospel is for all people. It's for all nations. It's for everyone. And I believe the gospel is relevant to every situation. But you have to present the gospel in a way that really shares authentic Christianity and what it really is to know and to walk with the Lord.
So unpack that.
Yeah.
Unpack that. What do you do? What do you think you have done there? I mean, in numbers aren't everything. You know, if you're in a town of 500,
right,
it's different than a town of 50,000. But you have grown. I mean, what's your attendance now on average?
I mean, with both services, over 300 average attendance.
How did that happen? You're a church planner. You've been there 20 years.
Yeah.
But you can be at a place for 20 years and and not grow. So I mean, how did that happen? What did you do? To break through that shell of Christianity?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And as far as growing a church, I think that you've heard this before, and probably many listening here have heard this before, but if you want to grow a church, grow a pastor. And you have to yourself be growing spiritually. My heart for education and development and all of those things. And so one thing, though, is that we knew early on when we planted the church, I made a commitment to the council. I won't call them elders because they're all in their 20s at the time when we started as a young adult church. But I made a commitment to them, and I said, guys, come what may, I'll give this 5 years of my life, because I don't think we could really tell in 1 or 2 years whether or not this was going to be successful. We knew with this spiritual climate that we are going to have to invest years into this in order for it to happen. And that ended up being very true. And I think right now, and this is across the board when I talk to leaders within the Church of God, that pastors that have made a commitment, a longer term commitment, are not always, but by and large, the healthier churches, because it just takes building relationship, it takes building yourself, it takes investing in a community, building those inroads, building those bridges. But so I think part of that for us was the longevity and just saying we're going to do it. But with that, as you said, longevity, doesn't just solve it, right? We say time heals all wounds. No, it doesn't. Time doesn't mean anything in that term. No. But focused, intentional time of ministry, where you continue to say, we're going to keep challenging and growing. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I sometimes joke with people and I say, I've pastored one church for this Easter will be 22 years, and I think I've pastored 10 different churches.
Absolutely.
Because we grew, it changed, people transitioned out. We went to that next level, and you have to be willing to make those changes. That would be the one thing that I would say is you have to continue to keep growing. I'm a firm believer for any leader, any pastor, every Sunday, you give it everything you have with whatever you've got. And we did that when we had nothing. We did that when we were renting a building, not knowing if we're going to have it the next week. And we said, whatever we have, we will, with the most excellence that we can, do what we have with what we have. And we continue to do that. And if you just continue to consistently push yourself and drive yourself to that next level, you will find yourself in different places than you were. So, there are different seasons. I feel like I've pastored a church of 30 when we started, to 50, to 75, to 100, 150, 200 plus, 300. And there's different administrative and structural changes that you have to make in all of those levels in order to get to that next level. And sometimes people aren't willing to make those changes. And I'm a firm believer that I want to change. So what's interesting about us is the consistency has been our location and where we've lived, and yet the change has often been us making our own change. We're not changing locations, we're not doing any of those things, but we're changing our approach and adapting to what's going on. And by God's grace, we've kind of come full circle, where a lot of our growth right now is young adults. We started as a young adult church, we got older, all these things, and now we're seeing a whole new group of young adults attracted to that. This kind of goes back to sharing the gospel, in authentic faith.
Yes.
And I'll say that a lot of young adults right now, more and more, are more distant from that, even North Dakotans, from that religious Lutheran Catholic type background. And we're seeing more that are disconnected from any type of church, yet having a deep spiritual hunger. Yes. I do believe this is where churches like ours, in Pentecostal spirit-filled churches, there's people looking for that right now. Even in secular culture right now, there's a desire for people. I mean, we know the names of them, but there's popular podcasts right now that are secular, and they're talking about Jesus, and they're talking about scriptures. There's people, and I think young people, listening to these conversations, and they're looking for somebody who really knows Jesus to help them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me into another dimension of your ministry there. I saw pastor and his wife and their youngest daughter. She came with them last night. We met them for dinner, and I gave them both, because I genuinely have a genuine Christian affection for this couple. And so I gave them a big bear hug. I told them that's probably the most physical touch they've had since I left the NCR. It has been proven sociologically. I think I got that out without the gift of tongues at the moment. But it seems it's a phenomenon. The more north you move, the more, it's not that people aren't friendly or loving, but they're more reserved. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And so true. I had a bunch of Norwegians, and so you got more big old bear hug last night. Probably the first one you've got in a while. But so there is a unique dynamic of Eagles Wings and the Church of God, our niche or niche, however you want to say it. And that is our Pentecostal heritage. So with a bunch of reserved Lutherans, how did you pull off a Pentecostal church?
Well, it is a culture difference, and I'll tell you that even my wife, Diette, when she first came to the Lord, and as young adults, I rededicated my life. She started coming to church. We started coming to the Church of God for the first time. One of the things that she found very strange was this men hugging men, and she was thinking, what is going on here? This is the strangest thing I've ever seen.
Stepped into a cult.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that when people understand real Christian fellowship, and real, we don't as much now say, call each other brother and sister. I mean, and that's still the tradition in some churches, but I'm at least anyway not hearing that as much. But there's a deep theology in that. That is absolutely true. That we are not just an organization; that we're a family. And I think that when people understand that true doctrine, it leads to fellowship that is Christian, and it'll stretch you outside of your cultural boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, drill down a little bit too, though. I mean, because I obviously I've been to Eagles Wings and very Pentecostal, not in some kind of stereotypical way, but I feel like sometimes our guys are almost embarrassed.
Yeah.
But as you said a moment ago, people are looking for something that's more.
Yes.
So describe Pentecost Eagles Wings style, conservative. Boring Norwegians.
Well, exactly. This is something I asked a lot of people and a lot of denominational leaders about, was how to, create a contemporary church in our cultural context that is uniquely Pentecostal, which we are. And honestly, I never found a good answer. So I realized that was a trail that we had to kind of blaze ourselves. And one of the things that I had to do was separate the doctrine and the tradition. And some people might be scared of that a little bit, but let me qualify what that means. Is that there's the statements of faith in the Church of God, which are really the uniting document that unites every church. We know, I mean, even in the Church of God, sometimes within a state or region, there's multicultural, there's different traditions, there's a our denomination does, I think, a great job of allowing a lot of freedom in ecclesiology and how we do church in a local level. And so you have that, and you have all these, these different traditions and that kind of thing. But if you go back to what makes us uniquely Pentecostal, that it is that statement of faith. And obviously in that, the one that gets probably the most attention, that makes us unique in an evangelical setting, is the speaking with other tongues.
Sure.
The Spirit gives the evidence. And our continuationist view of the gifts of the Spirit, and then you can add a lot of terms like full gospel, Spirit-filled, however you want to say that. But so for part of me is to say, okay, we're not Southern, not that that's bad or good, but we're Northern. that's,
Exactly.
that's who we are. And so we kind of separate some of those traditions out, and then said, but what is the non-negotiable of what really makes us Pentecostal? And for me, it was the gifts, the worship, altar time, praying for healing, and if you look at that, you can teach that and help people understand. This is laying on of hands might be different, but you're sick. If
Yes.
somebody, you're not sick, but if somebody was going through and came to our church and said, we're going to pray for you, we're going to lay hands on you, and we're going to pray as the Bible says,
Yeah,
and
it's
we're
not
going to
a
believe
tradition,
for
it's just
healing.
right there in the book.
Exactly, and we're going to believe for healing, that God can heal you through doctors, but God can also heal you instantaneously in a miraculous way that has no explanation. And that's our doctrine of divine healing, right? But it's now in a practical way that people can understand it. And in our church in North Dakota, just wasn't last Sunday, but I think 2 or 3 Sundays ago. There was a public tongues and interpretation of tongues in the service, and God operated in that way. And I think for us too, sometimes we'll use those as a teaching opportunity. Sometimes it'll be 30 seconds, and I'll say, God spoke to us today through the gift of tongues and interpretation of tongues, as we see in 1 Corinthians 12, 13, and 14.
Very good.
And if you can just point people to say, Pentecostal Christianity is biblical, right? This is not some wild, far-fetched thing.
In the book.
There might be people that see those scriptures different than you and I do, but no one can say that we are not based on scripture. And so biblical, authentic Christianity, bringing that in. And then I also think there's something unique about Pentecostal worship, the expressions and that kind of thing. But I will say that I think that from 20 years ago to now, there's a lot of things that would be uniquely Pentecostal 20 years ago that are more widely accepted. What I mean by that is raising your hand in worship is becoming very much more common in churches.
They're doing it better than us.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You're exactly right. Well, when I'll never forget leaving South Carolina. It was in January. The executive committee and in their wisdom sent me to North Dakota in January. But it was just a unique situation, a midterm kind of thing. But I called one of my bosses. It was and a dear friend too, Jim Stevens, and Dr. Stevens. I said, give me some advice. I was on the way up to see. Never met you guys.
Yeah.
He says, well, David, whatever you do, he said, go a year without saying South Carolina and Fort Mill. And what he was telling me is that it gets back to what you're saying, not the traditions. Pentecost is not the traditions. It's the doctrine. And then how we apply it can look a little different. And I found, as they say, fire baptized. I found a fire baptized group of people in North Dakota that love God just as much as anything I'd ever seen in the most camp meeting run around the church, pound on the pulpit in the South. And so, I'm proud of you and I honor you as a true Pentecostal, but that's kind of a label too, a true Christian, biblical, evangelical Christianity, and I honor you. And let me ask you another question here, and because we've had this conversation, you've had some times where you were running on fumes, even under my watch. And I had this, not a moral failure or anything like that. Just the stress and strain and the pressure of life. 22 years. So sustainability here. Talk to me. Give the guys just to hang in there.
Well, let me give you props that it was under your leadership. It was the first time that I took a sabbatical. And that was, obviously the denomination had adopted, that in that time. But I was really surprised at how encouraging you were. You were the first one to say, do it, take it. I will call you, you get away from your phone. And that was in 2019, and that was a very refreshing experience. And I regret that I didn't do that every 5 years before then. But, part of it, I'll be sharing a little bit about this tonight, but finding that in your personal prayer life, finding that Eden place, finding that place with the Lord. This narrative that circumstantially things are ever going to be perfect and ever going to be less stressful is kind of a myth. I'm not a gloom and doom about ministry. I love ministry. I love my life. I have a good family and all those things. But there are unique demands of ministry that just make it hard and that make it uniquely hard. And I think the day and age we're living in makes it uniquely hard. And that finding that place in your relationship with God, in His presence, and knowing Him, there is a refreshment and a strength that is only found in Him. That you can structure your church, your life, you can golf, you can fish, you can do all of those things.
Sure.
But I truly believe, and I give the glory to God for that it really is His strength. Our church is called Eagles Wings. Isaiah 40:31, those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength and mount up on wings like eagles, and they will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not grow faint. And that there is we're doing supernatural work, right? This is what we're doing here is not natural.
Exactly.
And to think that we can do this without supernatural strength, I think is a grave mistake in ministry, that we need His help and we need Him. I know that might sound so cliche, but I think that in my most burned out times, I have to admit that at the end of the day, sometimes it was scheduled, sometimes it was I needed a sabbatical, sometimes I would need that. But more than anything, you can go on a cruise, but there's something that the Lord does deep in your heart that only He can do. And that's the strength for this, and to cultivate that personal prayer life, to really know Him and to walk with Him. I can tell you after 22 years, I'm more convinced I can't do this without Him, without His help. It's completely impossible. So, yeah.
No, I think it's, you talked earlier about authenticity, and it has to work for you first.
Yeah.
For you to get up and be able to preach and minister in front of the people with authenticity. It's got to be real in you. Well, look, it's been a great visit. I've been sitting here. Our delegates are coming in, one right after the other. They have to take a moment and figure out. He's interviewing somebody here. But Pastor, let me ask you this question, and then what question should I have asked you? What's on your heart? What's speak to our guys, and this goes. I've got guys that watch this and gals that watch this all over the world, really, and so at the end of the day, right under that Norwegian skin is just a human being. It doesn't matter where we're at. We are all pretty much in the same boat. The view's a little different. And so talk to us. What's any advice you got?
And I'll say this might be related to my North Dakota heritage, and I'll give it a little bit of credit there. You know this. We're hardworking people. We don't ask for much. We don't ask for accolades. We're not emotional at times to a fault. But there's a consistency that we have, and I will say that being faithful to the Lord. God has been faithful to me, and I'm the tortoise in this race. So I have started very small. God has really, even over the last few years, given me some incredible opportunities, and I would just say, just go be faithful somewhere. I remember Diet and I just saying, when we started, we're going to plant our stakes somewhere. We did not know it would be in Minot. We thought it could be Bismarck. We thought it could be another state. We didn't know, but we thought we're going to plant our stakes. We're going to work hard. We're going to build a church, and we're going to do something for the sake of the kingdom of God and the gospel. And we've done that, and God has blessed us little by little. And those little wins, those little victories turn into the big victories later on. And in the last 2 years, I've preached at a mega church in Jakarta, Indonesia. I've preached at I've preached in Cambodia. I've taught just a few months ago in the Philippines. I've officiated a wedding at the Caribbean Ocean in the Gulf of America. Sorry, it was Mexico at the time.
Yeah.
And
You did a wedding at
yeah.
a place that did not even exist.
Yeah, exactly. A few months ago, I was last fall. I was officiating a wedding on Going to the Sun Road in Glacier National Park, one of the most beautiful places on earth.
Yes.
And now I'm with you in Illinois, and I can tell you, just delight yourself in the Lord and trust Him.
Yeah.
And I didn't ask for any of that. I just said, God, I'm gonna serve you, and we're bought with a price that the Lord gave His life for us, and He sacrificed for us, and for those of us that are called into ministry, to never forget that you're bought with a price. I was a real quick story, but I was talking to a man, the second worship leader ever of our church. And he is now a commercial airplane pilot. And we hadn't seen each other in 15 years. And he actually flew a plane into Minot. He said, I've got 24 hours. Let's meet for coffee. I said, absolutely.
Wow.
Let's meet. And I said, brother, what is it like flying an airplane commercially? And he used to be in the Air Force, that kind of thing, but now he's flying commercial. And he said, it's a lot of responsibility. He said, I learned the best thing from an instructor. And he said, when he was training me to be a pilot, he said, get out of that cockpit and go out, walk through that aisle, see that grandma going to visit her grandkids, see that couple going on their honeymoon, see that traveler trying to get where they're trying to go. And he said, that's your job. That's your business. And he said, you can get so geeked out in the cockpit with the controls that you forget what's going on behind you.
Yes.
I think in ministry, we can get so caught up in the mechanics of it that we miss the business that we're in.
I love it.
And it's those people. It's that young couple. It's that new believer. It's that seasoned saint that's approaching, the end of their life, and who has served God faithfully for 50, 60, 70 years. And you're going to be the one that gets up and shares at the end of their
that's
life.
great.
I mean, it's
That'll
incredible, but that's our business. And obviously, it's God first. We have in our core values of our church, it's God first. But then it's the people business after that. So,
That's
so
good.
as leaders, pastors, get out of the cockpit, get out of the office.
I love it.
Go walk the aisles. Remember who you're dealing with. I thought about how many times the only time we ever hear the pilot, right? Is that crackly or 70 degrees, whatever?
Have no clue what he's saying.
This happened to me 2 weeks ago. After this conversation, it was just days later from when I had this conversation. I've never had this happen. Maybe you have. But I was about to fly from Minneapolis to Detroit. It was a fairly large flight. All of a sudden, the guy gets out to do the announcements, right? It's the pilot. And he gets up and he says, here's 4 flight attendants. He said, I want you to know it's one of her birthdays today. He said, and I want you to wish her a happy birthday. And he tells us about the flight. He tells us about what's going on. And then he says, have a good flight. And he walks back in and he flies the plane. And I'm thinking,
Never had that happen.
Never had that happen. And can I tell you what? My whole experience on that flight was different. Because that guy got out of the cockpit for 3 minutes to go say hello. And it convicted me as a minister.
Absolutely.
How many people only hear your voice through the microphone? And how many people actually hear you face to face? One of the things, we've been doing is connect meetings. I do it every Sunday. I meet in a small room and meet new guests to our church. And I cannot tell you lately how many people have said that have attended larger churches, said, I've attended church for 6 months, a year, 3 years. I've never even had a conversation with the pastor. And they were so amazed that you're just talking to him. A 2-minute conversation.
Absolutely.
And it meant the world to somebody. And I think that's that connectivity that we need in our life. But remember what we're doing. Remember who we're doing it for. Get out of the cockpit. Go see the people.
I love it. That's this will go live tomorrow if I have the time to get it up. But man, you need to work some of that stuff in on Saturday at the pastors'
yes.
conference. But let me tell you my my favorite North Dakota story that will help you to understand North Dakotans and to some degree South Dakotans. To me, the South Dakotans are more cowboyish, and then Montana's really cowboyish.
Yes.
You've got a lot of ranchers in South Dakota,
Yeah.
and North Dakota. Oil, you got good just farmers, hardworking people, and some ranches too. But anyway, my personal assistant and the secretary and treasurer at the time of North Central Region was Jessica Even, dear woman. I call her a girl, but dear girl that we love, personal friend, and of course with the Hovdes, they've known each other for many years. But so, me being a Southern boy, I would come in every day and, Jessica, how you doing? And she said, I'm okay. Are you all right? Because in the South, I'm okay. That's passive aggressive. That I am. I want some sympathy, some love, attention. I'm not doing good. Yeah, fine. And so finally it dawned on me. She really is. It's just it's just Norwegian. Just kind of steady. So I walked in one day. And she said, I said, Jessica, you're okay? How you doing today? She says, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
I said, what? Have you won the lottery? So pretty good. That's like over the top. She was having a fantastic day. But that describes the good people up there. The tortoise. You just get up every day. When you're dealing with extreme weather, in the summer too, in Minot, it can be 115 degrees too.
Yeah.
It is almost like living on another
Yeah.
planet. It was invigorating to me in some ways. The weather, most of my life, now we'd have to deal with hurricanes and stuff like that occasionally, but would make me uncomfortable. But I had to learn up there the weather could kill me.
Yeah.
And so every trip I had to really, but it really invigorated me. But maybe you, Pastor, are like Pastor Travis, or Christian leader, or just Christian, wherever. God needs good businessmen as well, businesswomen. God needs good mothers, good grandparents. You've got a fire in your belly. You're not sexy, flashy. You're not the one that's getting calls from the White House to come and be on the latest commission. You just get up every day and you do your job.
Yeah.
Well, that's what God's called us all to do.
Right.
We may do it a little different.
Right.
But get up, feed your soul, protect yourself, and just keep getting her done day by day, running to win, as I say. So that was good stuff. I enjoyed talking to you. I love you.
Thank you.
Love your family.
Love you.
Rooting for you.
Thank you. Bless you.
Let's go get them. Let's keep running to win for the gospel's sake. I'll see you around the bend.